to go back to when I got diagnosed, my doctors were not actually looking to diagnose me with celiac. Even though I had told them about my family history, my grandfather had celiac, and then his mom or his dad's mom. It was one of the, I don't know how many great grandparents away, but it was before they really had a lot of information on celiac. She died of it, but nobody knew about it until after. She just kind of got thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, and she disappeared. And then she passed away. And when they were looking into reasons why she could have died, they were looking in her gut, and they were like, "Oh, she had that thing where when you eat bread, it kills you." And that's kind of how our family history went. So I was really surprised that my doctor didn't immediately test me for that when I said we had a history and all of the people in our family were thin. There is a common misconception that celiac causes bloating and the appearance or actual weight gain. So when you lose weight, it may actually be harder to nail down a diagnosis if no one's ready to diagnose you with it.
I didn't know that it can make people really, really thin. That actually makes sense, especially if it's like eating bread can kill you. It eventually will if you're losing weight, you're not able to absorb anything, you become malnourished. Like you going from the 115 to 85, was it?
82.
82 in that like 3 year period. So were they listening to you in that 3 year period?
No.
No.
In fact, one doctor, my first and only visit to their office, they brought their tablet and they took down all the notes of all the things that I told them I was dealing with, and the weight loss and etc. And he just looked at it and he looked at me and he's like, "We can't help you. I'm sorry." And that was my visit. So
That's terrible.
I think I had three doctors in that town before they tested me for celiac, and then they still didn't want to give me the diagnosis for celiac. And it was when I hit 82, I was in the ER because I was frequently going to the ER for issues that I couldn't identify, and they would just, that's how I got the you're just making stuff up, you want attention, because I kept going to the hospital. Um, I saw when they weighed me and it was 82 pounds, and I'm like, holy crap, I am literally gonna die. Me feeling like I'm gonna die isn't just in my head. I quit eating wheat on my own. And you're not supposed to do that when you are starting a celiac diagnosis. They need you to have as much damage in your gut to identify it. So you start to repair according to everybody. And I told them, well, I had already started to abstain from bread and wheat stuff to see just to see if I stop losing weight. It's like this may not help me, but doing nothing is absolutely killing me. So self-diagnosis leading to continuing to go to doctors until I get a proper diagnosis is what saved my life. If I hadn't had a doctor tell me that I didn't have celiac, I probably would have gone back to eating the traditional American diet. And who knows, maybe it would have led me back down the same weight loss and near death experience. Or maybe nothing would have happened and I would have just been frustrated with my health with no answers. I don't know. But I know that it can be very hard to get a diagnosis if you don't have the right symptoms.
I've heard that as well.
Yeah. I think I forgot to mention that before, and I think that's the most important part of my diagnosis story is I didn't have the right symptoms for the doctor to go, oh, your grandfather and then someone in the maternal of his family. Oh, okay. Maybe you. There's, I'm bitter about that and I don't have any nice words. So I'm just going to go to a different point.
Hey,
Cause
I don't think it's a bad thing like to be bitter about that. I hope I didn't accidentally mute you. Okay. Because personally, like I've had doctors dismiss me even when I've had positive test results. And people that don't go to the doctor all the time assume that doctors are like God. They're not. They're human, they make mistakes, and they don't always even believe the positive test results. So it all comes down to advocating for yourself. And what you just said just proves how much you advocated for yourself to get to that diagnosis and work on that yourself. And you have to do that because doctors don't know everything.
No. I did a little bit of time at the end of my high school going, like, preparing myself to go into the medical field. There was a vocational college that it had integrated with our high school courses where if you start taking them in high school, you graduate with a degree that carries over to that vocational school where you can become a registered nurse. And there's stages. There's RNs and LVNs and NPs and PNs and LPNs and LVNs and there's just so many letter combinations. Like the medical field is so broad and it's an entry level program. I did 3 of the 4 required years because grandma was a nurse. My Rusty Venture grandpa's wife, she was a nurse and she knew a lot about everything. Just I loved it. So I wanted to kind of follow her a little bit. She's my idol. And I realized I have a disconnect when it comes to people. My care goes so far and then my anxiety issues kick in and I'm like, I'm probably not the best person to help people in personal medical situations. So I decided I'm out. I'm going to go do other stuff. And that 3 years taught me everything that I needed to know about the body that I didn't realize I needed to know when I got into celiac. Because of celiac, I've had to teach myself things that you don't learn in school. I've had to learn how to cook things that are I'm still not pro chef level, but I have to make everything from scratch if I want to know that it's safe. So I have a whole new skill set on top of that. But if I hadn't gone to school for that, just in high school, it would have been so hard for me to understand what was happening to my body when I needed to make changes to make it better over food. Like when you have a broken leg, that's easy. You put a cast on it, and then if you need physical therapy for walking, you do that, and then it heals and it's done. Having an immune system problem attack and change your body and how it reacts to your environment, it's like having to go to school to be a human.
Yeah, but a different kind of human, like a subset of human, where you have to like learn to integrate all of these new things into your life so that you don't have problems while being around people that don't have the problem you have. So it
Yes.
makes it even more challenging. And then you have to try to educate other people. And that can lead to being exhausted because you're verbalizing things all the time. No, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. And it's like a broken record. And people
Mm-hmm.
either listen and they accept it and they do the things to make life safe for you, or they don't listen and then they try to push those boundaries, which do you harm. And then it's like, no, I'm done. Like, you're not going to be in my life then. Not on a
Mm-hmm.
physical level, that's for sure. You know,
Oh,
so it's a lot of learning.
you
I relate to that.
actually
Sorry.
like, brought up one of my next points
Okay,
about
excellent.
people.
Feel free.
Educating people for celiac disease is because celiac is so broad how people are affected. There's information that's good for certain situations, but not every situation. So there's folks who my celiac must be everyone's celiac, and they will go with their personal experience and spread that information as though it is everyone's, and you get misinformation. And there's the next set of gluten-free people. People with an autoimmune disease that don't have celiac that's triggered by gluten. One of them is Hashimoto's. I have heard some people with lupus need to eliminate certain foods. Wheat can be one of them for some people. So when you get outside of the gluten for celiac aspect of I'm on a gluten-free diet, there's a whole bigger category of people who need the same thing for a different reason. But then you have people who are a little bit sensitive to it or just feel better when they eliminate wheat. they're more of on an optional diet, and how they excuse me, how they interact in restaurants has a direct impact on those of us with an autoimmune disorder affected by food. When you tell your waiter that you can't have something, and the waiter goes out of the way to talk to that chef, the one chef in the world that's sympathetic to your food situation, and they prepare your food special and bring it to you, and then the waiter comes back and sees that person eating off of their friend's plate, eating that little bit of gluten that they just made a big deal about. I can't have this. I'm serious. I'll absolutely die if you give this to me right here. And then they see them borrowing a bite. Like, it's confusing. And I'm not going to argue that anybody shouldn't be allowed to specifically order something a certain way. But when you say, I'll literally die, and then you are seen eating the thing that will literally kill you, it lessens the impact from somebody who will literally get cancer down the road. Celiac isn't an instant death situation when you're exposed. I don't think Hashimoto's is either. It can be very muddy about when symptoms will onset for a person. It could be a few hours after you eat the offending item. It could be the next day. It could be, if you have a wheat allergy, you're going to have the whole thing come faster. But when we try to educate people, there's a lot of different kinds of gluten-free we have to see if they've heard about before we talk about our own experiences. Because if you've seen that person in the restaurant, it's going to be hard for you to listen to a person with celiac, because it's like, well, is it a choice for you? And you have to establish this is not a choice. With an autoimmune disorder, I find it better to treat it like an allergy, so that I'm not exposing myself little bits at a time constantly to find out later that I got stomach cancer. And that's the thing. You don't know. If you're not actively trying to educate yourself, to educate others, to make your environment safer, you're gonna find out what cards you drew with it. And for some people, it will be stomach cancer. I've said that several times because that is one of the big cancers that untreated celiac or poorly treated celiac can get. And then there's the malnourishment and the vitamin deficiency. And if you're not on top of your vitamin deficiencies, stroke, heart disease, other kinds of immune issues, like most of us celiacs have to constantly take B12. I also need to take vitamin D, and my doctor has me on potassium. These are things that I would get from a traditional American diet just in the food. Now that I have to restrict everything to what celiac's safe, I'm missing out on a lot of stuff. So if you're trying to eat the way you used to carefully, you're still missing things. And if you're not being careful, you're doing things that are going to cause those ongoing issues with your vitamins and overall health. I hope all of that made sense. I'm kind of, it's a lot of information and I get lost and I kind of go in circles. So I do apologize if I've done that.
No, you're not doing that at all, and you're explaining things really well. I really appreciate you taking the time to share what you've been through. And I hope that when we're all done, that you take some good recoup time and do something good for yourself, because I know that reiterating stuff can be exhausting.
Thinking about it a lot takes some energy, and I'm definitely going to have notes for that from the fibromyalgia, because fibromyalgia is a whole new thing. But I will say it affects celiac, because when you have a condition that affects your energy, pain levels, and ability to physically go about daily tasks, celiac is hard to keep up with. The cooking at home, it's not just I'm going to whip a sandwich together. It's I have to get my bread at the appropriate temperature in order for it to be edible, which involves a toaster or an oven or frying it in a pan, whatever appliances you have. You have to clean the stuff that you use to heat up your bread. You have to do every step. and make a mess in your kitchen and then clean the mess up in your kitchen. And when you have to do that for every meal, or at least once a meal every single day, and you don't have quick options, it adds to the level of exhaustion. So I have the challenges of, if I make pasta today, am I going to be paying for it tomorrow? And I cook a lot of my meals in one go. So I like to do one pot stuff or make very bulk amounts of things, freeze half of it, and then have the other half available in the fridge to eat immediately. And that means dedicating a day to cooking. And then I have to recover physically for a couple of days after. Um, I'm right now, I just got over cooking on Saturday? Saturday or Sunday? Um, the fog makes it hard to remember specific things. So I know it was a few days ago, and I slept a lot of it off on the couch when I could, and I wasn't very productive in my daily life. I mean, I got a little load of laundry or two done and taking care of the cats. One of them's here. Um, it's just really hard after being in the kitchen standing up with the pain that comes from it, having to do all of the things that celiac asks of me. The one thing I miss is breakfast food, and it is the most labor intensive thing because you have to make your eggs if you're having bacon or sausage, if you're having biscuits, if you're an American, you do American biscuits and gravy breakfast. All of those steps are now, you have to make them from scratch as though Betty Crocker didn't exist. No more canned biscuits, no more packet gravy, no more any of those quick shortcuts. So celiac, it's time consuming. You have to have energy for it. If you don't have a support system, it's going to be very difficult. And if you're in a shared kitchen environment, which a lot of families do that, it's a lot of effort to ask people in your house, hey, did you use my peanut butter? Did you clean up after this? What crumb is that? It's lots to keep up with. I think some people just don't see it. And I think words. Sorry.
No, no need to apologize.
Um,
You basically answered one of my questions, just how is your life impacted by it? So I didn't even have to ask, you just like went into it.
that actually did have sort of a bullet point here
Okay.
for comfort food. Um, I'm impacted a lot when I'm sick. When people get a flu, the way I grew up, you get chicken soup and crackers, eat a sleeve of saltines or something, and I can't do that anymore. The easy to digest foods from when you're after having a thing, they're very different for me. A lot of my stuff is made from harsh grains instead of the wheat. So corn flour, you don't want to be eating crackers that were mixed with hard grain, and the crackers aren't pleasant to begin with. The food is a joke. The Pop Tarts. I am in a celiac support group on the internet on a certain social site. Somebody posted a picture of a box of Pop Tarts they found at their store. In the box, on the picture box, it's a nice, beautiful, light pastry with a frosting, even with little speckles of sprinkles in it. And it's like, oh, that looks nice and inviting. She opens the bag, and it's a brown pastry with like a stripe, like a landing stripe of browner frosting. It's not like just, and the picture, she's like, really? And I'm like, they're laughing at us when they're making our food. They're laughing. I feel like it's a joke because you can't just go have simple things anymore. Nothing's simple. That is how we're impacted. Nothing is simple anymore.
I can relate to that on on a different level with the mast cell stuff because like I've had nutritionists tell me, oh, have a can of whatever, like, oh, there's canned this and canned that. I haven't had canned food because of BPA for 10 some years. Like, I cut it out so long ago because it was making me so sick. And yeah, like BPA just it's bad. It's in everything that's canned. It just leaches into your food. And I don't even think it's food at that point. It's so pressurized that it's become like a paste. Who knows what else is in there to preserve it for a whole bunch of years, and a lot of preservatives give me problems, so I don't do it. But when I've had doctors, well, or nutritionists, I should say, not doctors, encourage me to try stuff that's easy and quick in that regard, I'm like, no. Like, if I want beans, I have to take actual beans, soak them overnight, put them in the fridge, leave them there, rinse them, and then I put them in the pressure cooker, and then I cook them all day, and then I have this big thing of beans that I can section out into bags and put in my freezer so that when I want beans, I can take them out and eat them that way. But they have to go from there, into the freezer and that kind of stuff. So it's not like and it's a big task just to do that. So I understand the cooking and then not having the energy after the cooking and having to rest and recoup.
You get it.
I do get it. We may have different ailments, but it's something that it's very, very draining when you live with chronic health issues. Like, it takes a
Hmm.
lot of energy. And it's not as easy as just going and buying something that's pre-made, because that pre-made thing could have come in contact with so many nuts.
Yeah. It's made me very aware of food manufacturing processes, and it makes me a bit enraged that there's not more being done for people who have allergies, sensitivities, and autoimmune disorders. We have to eat. And if our country is going to say we have to work or be a level of productive, well, I can't do that if I'm having to do everything we're talking about when it goes into making a meal. If I have to churn my own butter and soak my own beans and be present for all of the things because I'm running heat and oven and stove, you can't just walk away from that. Like, people make fast, convenient food for it to be fast and convenient, not for it to kill them.
Exactly. And there's really no fast and convenient options in this kind of situation. Like, everything takes time. Even if you were to make like a gluten-free pasta and stuff, you probably have to make your own sauce, I would guess.
Yes,
Right?
I
Like,
make
I'd have to make my own sauce. Most of the sauces have something in them,
yes.
mushrooms. Like, there's so many things that can cross-contaminate or are in things.
What gets me is the cross contamination of natural foods that were never around wheat and their growth process, and it was what it took to preserve them. Banana chips. I used to love those dried banana chips. You just slice banana and dehydrate it somehow. And I'm at the grocery store. I see this big family sized bag and I go, yes, banana chips. It says gluten free on the front. And I flip it over and it says processed in a facility with wheat. And I'm like, my doctor says eat more fruit. What fruit? I gotta dehydrate my own fruit. That requires having an, an appliance to do so, or the ability, the knowledge of how to do that. I don't know how to dehydrate fruit, and I don't have a dehydrator. I own, because of celiac, we have your standard stove and microwave that comes in the kitchen. I also own a Ronco chicken rotisserie cooker, an Instapot. I have a big countertop mixer, um, the toaster. What else? There's something else I'm forgetting about that we have, but I have something to make almost everything except a pasta maker and a meat grinder and a food dehydrator. Those are the things I don't have yet. And I probably will at some point.
It's a lot of stuff you have to invest in to make sure that your health isn't impacted. I think there should be coverage for that kind of stuff.
There should be. These are my aids to live. If I'm going to eat food, I'm going to have a way to make it. Celiac in itself is not considered a disability, but
What?
I am learning that that's not entirely true when our society is not even trying to give us accommodations when we leave our home. I don't live next to all of my family. If I wish to see them, I have to travel a great distance from my house, which means my kitchen, which means my safe food. I am disabled from being a part of the traveling system. Like there's so many things I could technically be doing if the environment would accommodate me just a little bit. And it's food. Food is a basic thing in life. I have never thought about food so much as when I got diagnosed with celiac. And now it's all I can think about. And how people don't have access to it over certain things, money or dietary restrictions, mostly dietary restrictions and money. It sends me into a spiral of my own conspiracy theory dark rabbit hole of what is the industry doing to us? Why don't we have this stuff?
I think it's inhumane, and I think it is a disability, and I think it is something that needs to be recognized. There's like fragrances as an example. People who have multiple chemical sensitivity, mast cell activation, asthma, lung disease, all of that sort of stuff. There's, the label of scent sensitivities, but they don't actually make environments for people like myself to be safe in. So it's a disservice. It's a disservice to my community. It's a disservice to your community. And it's dehumanizing is what it is.
Using public services are dangerous for us, like
Yeah.
transportation, laundry services. I lived in a home just after my celiac diagnosis where I did not own a washer and dryer for my clothing, but I lived right down the street from the laundromat. Well, if you've had knowledge of people that have kids, somebody's gonna wash a sandwich on accident. Just because you washed the bread, it doesn't mean it doesn't have gluten anymore. It's clean bread now, but now it's bread that's getting on my clothes. Whatever goes through those washers and dryers through the day before they're serviced and cleaned, and they don't even get fully detailed and cleaned between use, that is something we get exposed to. Their laundry soap remnants. You have fragrance issues. You can't share a washing machine. If somebody's soap gets left behind, that's getting in your clothes.
And I'm muted. And then you can't get away from it. Like it's on you. It absorbs into your pores. And that's something that I've had to explain that to people. They're like, "Oh, you can put a mask on and you'll be fine." Yeah, I could put a mask on, but it still does absorb into my pores. When I leave the house, I am putting myself at risk, even if I'm going to do something that I wanted to do. Like if I want to go and walk my dog, I'm gonna have problems. I know I'm gonna have problems unless this medication I'm on magically makes me, go into remission or some shit. But I don't know. So everything does impact in that way. And it's when you were talking about like the bread packaging and having to wipe it down, and when you don't, you get symptoms. It's like residual fragrance for me. So if someone doesn't wash their clothes in fragrance stuff for a while and then, they came over, there would still be residuals in it. I would still smell it. I smell things that other people can't smell. And then I'm like, I'm starting to get a headache. Oh, but I did my due diligence. It's like, no, what you need to do is more than people are willing to actually do, in my experience. So
sometimes it means getting something new and having it never been exposed to the thing. I had to get rid of my towels, my kitchen towels, for my celiac transition because the flour remnants and fabric, just the little fuzzies in betweens, I guess things won't completely wash out all of the way for gluten for some reason. And so that's why I'm like, it's clean gluten, but it's still gluten. I can't have it. So we have to get rid of anything porous. So fabric has to go, wood utensils, plastic utensils, anything that's got a scratch in it. I've had to replace everything in my home to get away from the residual of gluten because you can't just wash it real good and then hope you got it out. I guess it doesn't work that way when it comes to materials absorbing things. And I haven't taught myself enough science to understand it, but I know what the effect is and the consequences are. So I'm like, all right, new towels, got it.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't have them anymore, but I used to have costumes and they had perfume in them because I used to wear perfume before I realized what was going on. And I had to get rid of them. Like I have none of them. I liked them, but they were full of smells that I couldn't get out. And it's like, well, they have to go. Like I know with my situation, I can use like activated charcoal and activated carbon to pull fragrance out, but that's like a 6 months to a year process sometimes. So
Wow.
you just have to like leave it somewhere with that in it to pull the smell out, but it takes a long time. So most of the time I just have gotten rid of things. Or if someone's given me something, oh, I have this shirt I want you to have.
Yeah.
Okay, nope. Like, sorry. Especially if it's like secondhand, whether it's from a secondhand store or it's like their own clothing, then it's like, no. Brand new stuff tends to be better, but it depends on the store because there's certain huge stores that have so much laundry soap. But anyway, sorry. That's a
Oh,
whole other bag of worms.
I've learned some with sewing things. When you get raw fabric, the way that it's manufactured, when you get it, it's got a smell to it often. Or if they've washed it, maybe they washed it in a certain kind of soap. And you got to pay attention to what you're buying, even when you're trying to make your own clothing.
Yes, this is true. Like I can't get fabric from a secondhand store. If I get it from the uh like the fabric store, which I haven't been to a fabric store in a while, if there's a smell on it, I can't buy it. I had ordered fabric off of eBay and it reeked like perfume and I had to send it back. I was like, are you kidding me? Why would you spray it with something?
Home shops are such a, you know, because it's a home shop, you don't know how everything's being handled and stored.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's interesting some of the like commonalities with situations that it definitely helps me feel less alone. So I really appreciate you sharing everything that you have shared. And it's very brave of you to do it as well, putting yourself out there on the internet. So
Well, I'm not blasting the doctors by name, so,
no, I don't do that either. So
but they know who they are if they see it. One thing
you
about,
know you know who you are.
yeah, there's one thing about celiac that, um, as of right now, to my knowledge, there's no treatment for celiac other than the diet change and the lifestyle restrictions and changes. So when we get affected and glutened, as we call it in the community, there's nothing we can take. 4 minutes, okay. Like, we don't have anything we can take for it. There's no pill for it. There's only tough it out and hope that you have a short flare with your celiac and take care of your immune system as much as you can in that time, because while your body's attacking itself, you don't want to go be around other people that are sick and catch that flu when normally maybe you wouldn't. So that is the thing about celiac. We don't have a treatment yet. And when you are affected by contaminants, you have to take care until you get through that flare period, and then you can kind of go back to interacting with people as normal. But even that, everything that we've talked about before, it affects things. Going to work, socializing, being around friends when you're in a vulnerable state. You don't want to say no to the people you're normally around. You don't want to other yourself by saying, well, I'm alienating myself for my safety. Sorry, friends. And then your friends go, well, we don't like that. They don't want to be there in your life in a way that they can support you. They want you to be the same, and It's just, even when you're not sick, you're just in that word window, it it molds your life in ways that, man, it's a change. And yes, the lack of treatment is very, very upsetting and irritating. But if anybody was wondering about that with celiac, I just wanted to mention it before the time ran out.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate that. If there are other things that you think of like after about celiacs, we can always do bleh, I can't words. We can always do another conversation after.
I don't know, because I think more celiac talk from me would just be complaining about all of the things that, little things, just tiny things. Oh, before I'm gonna pick Her Majesty up.
Oh, cute. Such a
This is
pretty color.
She is a snowshoe, and she is like, "Why did you pick me up? I was sleeping."
Oh, she looks tired. I can't even see her eyes. She's like, put me back. I want to
Going
go
back to the spot.
sleep.
I have an electric blanket on because it's chilly.
I think there's a time and a place to talk about the things that are irritating with it, and I think also it's healthy to like get that kind of stuff out personally. So if that is something you wanted to do, you're more than welcome to. If not, there's no pressure to do so. I rant and rave on Twitch talking about stuff sometimes because I just get really irritated, especially when people are like, "Oh, you could just do this and we could see each other." And I'm like, "No, you could just do all the things that I actually need you to do so that I don't die." So,
Is it too much to ask that I not die?
exactly.
I would relate. Thank you for talking to me about these things.
Thank
Autoimmune
you.
disorders are so life changing.
They really, really are. It's really nice to talk to someone else who's been through similar situations, especially with people. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you too. I'm hearing you talk about your own challenges in life. It does the same for me. I'm not the only person whose life had to change. It is okay to be mad, and letting it out other rather than packing it in is a lot better.